Eric Rajak, CEO of regional rating agency CariCris, and you're watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
The time by CariCris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by QMX Wealth Management, making more possible. Investor strategies, a Caribbean trade push, and escalating Middle East tensions sending shockwaves through global markets. Hello and welcome to CBX Business News for Friday, June 13, 2025. I'm Yanil Wood. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast, locally, Morgan Stanley's Chief Investment Officer urges active investing as valuation multiples expand, outlines key portfolio moves for investors in today's market. On the regional front, trade, not talk. CARICOM Secretary General presses regional leaders to deepen trade ties and diversify economies. And over on the international stage, global markets rattle as Israel-Iran conflict escalates, oil and gold surge, global stocks slide. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories right after this break.
We get the big contract. 50,000 units a month for 3 years. Great. Won't need help.
If you are a business owner that requires capital for the expansion of your business, talk to a registered broker today to find out more about listing your company on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, an efficient alternative to other financing options.
Thank God for the Jamaica Stock Exchange Junior Market.
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, providing a fair, efficient, and transparent stock market.
Okay, I just sent the money. I'll WhatsApp you the tracking number.
Thanks, Daddy. I can't wait to buy that PS5.
Listen to me. Your birthday money is not just for spending. Remember what I told your mom? Remember to open the bank account immediately after collecting the money. Your mom has her ID, TRN, proof of address, proof of income, and your school ID.
I'm not an adult yet, so mommy will have to open the account with me.
Yes. Anyways, I'm headed back to work, so call me later. I love you guys.
This financial literacy tip is brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, promoting financial inclusion. For more information, visit our BOJ Real Talk playlist on our YouTube channel.
The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with news on the investment front. Amid mounting geopolitical instability, escalating tariff tensions, ongoing market sell-offs, and the prolonged Russia-Ukraine war, Chief Investment Officer CIO and Head of Global Investment Office at Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, Lisa Chalet, is urging investors worldwide to pay close attention to expanding valuation multiples and consider shifting toward active stock-picking strategies rather than relying solely on passive index exposure. In an article entitled New Bull Market is on Shaky Ground, Chalet offered sharp guidance on how investors should position their portfolios. She advises rebalancing portfolios and preparing for average U.S. equity returns in the range of 5 to 10% within an environment marked by increased volatility, higher inflation adjusted, or real interest rates and a weaker U.S. dollar. Next, the CIO suggests adding diversifying positions in international equities, commodities, energy infrastructure, and hedge funds. Finally, she recommends that investors worldwide should consider maintaining higher than normal exposure to investment grade and municipal bonds, particularly those with short to neutral durations. The timely advice by the Morgan Stanley CIO comes amid signs of pressure on corporate margins from weak productivity readings in the first quarter and elevated unit labor costs. Additionally, current trends in U.S. capital spending appear discouraging, with durable goods orders turning negative and the Institute for Supply Management (ISM) new orders indexes for both manufacturing and services sectors remaining in contraction. CAC 2000 Limited has returned to profitability in the second quarter of the 2025 financial year, posting a net profit of Jamaican $2.5 million. This marks a significant improvement from the first quarter and reduces the company's year-to-date loss position to 56.1 million Jamaican dollars. The company's CEO, Gia Abraham, says the positive Q2 performance reflects the early success of CAC 2000 strategic recalibration, disciplined cost management, and operational focus. Despite ongoing macroeconomic challenges and project delays, the company's core business lines have remained resilient. Notably, cash reserves more than doubled year over year, and operating cash flows were reduced by over 50%, underscoring strong financial stewardship. The CEO says this period has been one of strategic reassessment and operational realignment, and has allowed CAC to sharpen priorities, strengthen leadership, and lay a solid foundation for sustainable growth. With a clear strategy and enhanced governance, they are confident in their ability to deliver long-term value to shareholders. Meanwhile, the company's revenue and gross profit remained relatively stable, reflecting the resilience of CAC's core business lines despite tighter liquidity and project delays. At the end of Q2, CAC's revenue was $243,374,600, while year-to-date revenue for the end of April 2025 amounted to $433,731,525. Now, earnings per share EPS for the quarter stood at 2 cents, when compared to a loss per share LPS of 32 cents in the corresponding quarter of 2024. And Jamaica Public Service Company JPS has signed major agreements with 2 North American-based contracting firms to provide hundreds of linemen to assist in electricity restoration efforts, should the island be affected by a hurricane this year. This proactive initiative greatly enhances JPS's hurricane response capabilities by supplementing its local workforce and contractors, as well as the mutual assistance typically provided by Caribbean partners through CARILEC, with an experienced external team trained in large-scale restoration efforts. The initiative was finalized during an onboarding session with Holland Power Services, one of the contracting firms at the JPS head office in Kingston, earlier this week. As part of the visit, top executives from Holland Power Services were engaged in a comprehensive reconnaissance operation, receiving briefings on Jamaica's electricity grid and conducting visits to some of JPS's key operational facilities. Meanwhile, JPS President and CEO Hugh Grant hailed the development as game-changing in the country's hurricane preparedness strategy. According to Mr. Grant, this arrangement will mean more boots on the ground from day one. He noted that the goal is to preemptively have the resources in place ahead of a hurricane to allow for safe, quick restoration of power to customers. Now to trading news from the Jamaica Stock Exchange. 100 stocks traded on the JSE Friday, of which 40 advanced, 49 declined, and 11 traded firm. Sterling Investments, JMMB Group 7.1%, Cumulative Redeemable Preference Share, Kintar Holdings, and Productive Business Solutions 9.25% perpetual cumulative US dollar were the leading winners. Leading the losers were First Rock Real Estate Investments US dollar, Jamaica Public Service Company 7%, Consolidated Bakeries, and Caribbean Producers Jamaica. Now the main index advanced by 1,324.44 points, or 0.42%, to close at 313,828.14. The junior market index declined by 29.72, or 0.87%, to close at 3,399.32. And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard. In today's Market Education Feature, we take a closer look at the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, better known as UNCITRAL. Established in 1966 as a subsidiary body of the UN General Assembly, UNCITRAL serves as the United Nations' primary legal authority on international trade law. Its core mission is to modernize and harmonize global rules governing international commerce, prompting smoother international trade and investment among member states. With growing economic interdependence worldwide, UNCITRAL facilitates global trade expansion through the development of uniform legal frameworks. The organization is headquartered in New York and holds annual sessions, alternating between New York and Vienna. The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's the Market Education Feature and the end of the local segment. Please stay with us. The regional business news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited has been a part of Jamaica's manufacturing landscape for over 20 years. By crafting unique flavors and fragrances, we have become a part of your favorite household and food items such as beverages, ice cream, household cleaners, and much more. Known throughout the Caribbean for the highest quality, we continue to innovate with strong leadership, a dedicated team with integrity. We go the extra mile for our customers. Create the next taste sensation. Contact us at 876-9235-111 or visit our website, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn pages.
Welcome back, and now for the regional business news. Caribbean Community CARICOM Secretary General Dr. Carla Barnett is pressing regional trade leaders to urgently deem economic diversification and scale up access to both regional and international markets, warning that sustained growth hinges on bold, coordinated action. Speaking at the 60th regular meeting of the Council for Trade and Economic Development, quoted earlier this week, Dr. Barnett made a forceful appeal for the Caribbean to confront long-standing structural weaknesses head-on.
The recent tariff shocks are a stark reminder of the need for us to diversify our trade and economic relations. We must redouble our efforts to deepen existing and explore new markets and develop new partnerships if the region is to advance its goal of economic growth and sustainable development.
The CARICOM Secretary General also stressed the urgent need to remove long-standing trade barriers and address non-compliance issues that hinder growth in the region.
We need to promote regional production and expand intra-regional trade by updating policies and practices to support entrepreneurship and make trade and business development easier. We also have an imperative to address the impediments to trade and remove long-standing issues of non-compliance from our agenda.
CARICOM Secretary General Dr. Carla Burnett. The government of Guyana is signaling a major shift in its approach to strengthen healthcare staffing, with plans to introduce new conditions for the employment of Cuban medical professionals. The move comes as part of a broader recruitment strategy targeting foreign nurses to meet the growing human resource needs of several hospitals now under construction across the country. Speaking during his weekly press conference on Thursday, Vice President Dr. Barrett Jagdeo says these guidelines aim to ensure that Cuban recruits meet specific employment standards that comply with international regulations and avoid conflicts with U.S. policies.
We're recruiting people from around the world, not confined to Cuba. But we're working to ensure that the people who come here from Cuba, that they meet the definition because of what the U.S. Secretary of State mentioned, that the conditions of work here don't run afoul of the requirements set by the United States of America.
And as for the much-anticipated Fulcrum project, Vice President Barrett Jagdeo says there's been little movement in negotiations. The Fulcrum LNG project is a proposed large-scale gas development initiative that aims to monetize the country's vast natural gas reserves.
On Fulcrum, I don't think there's been much progress because we're more focused on the elections. So in any case, there'd be no agreement signed before the elections with any of these parties, because it would be, I think, unethical to do so in a major project of this nature. So right now, those negotiations would go on autopilot for the time being, because our attention is focused more on the election.
Vice President of Guyana, Dr. Barrett Jagdeo. In other news, the government of St. Lucia is moving to ease the cost of living burden on consumers by eliminating value-added tax VAT on 70 essential items. Speaking during a pre-cabinet press conference earlier this week, Prime Minister Philip Japper says the goods, which were previously either VAT exempt or taxed at 12.5%, will now all be zero-rated, a change expected to trigger an immediate 12.5% drop in prices.
We are removing the VAT on all items, on all of these 70 items. All of them are going to be zero rated. There'll be no VAT on 70 items. What this means is that automatically the goods that are zero rated, the price should go down by 12.5%. Automatically. Now remember, I said earlier that we do not control the cost of these goods when they come to St. Lucia, because they're not derived from St. Lucia. We do not control the cost of these goods. So when these goods come into St. Lucia and the supermarket puts their markup, etc., there will be no 12.5% VAT on these goods.
That was Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Philip J. Hare. Now to trading news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. 15 securities traded on the TTSE Friday, of which 7 advanced. 3 declined and 5 traded firm. Today's winners were led by CIBC Caribbean Bank, Ansa McCall, Prestige Holdings, and Guardian Holdings, while the losers were NCB Financial Group, Massey Holdings, and Republic Financial Holdings. Other results of the day include the All TNT Index advancing by 5.77 to close at 1,511.02. The Composite Index advancing by 11.50 to close at 1,038 points. And the Cross-Listed Index also advanced, but by 2.47 to close at 74.45. And still remaining at 91.81 is the SME Index. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The International News segment with Rondine Williams is up next.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. In the international news, WTI crude oil futures surged over 6% to $72.70 per barrel on Friday, briefly touching their highest level since February, as escalating tensions in the Middle East rattled markets. Meanwhile, gold prices surged over 1% in about $3,420, approaching record high as investors sought safe haven assets amid the geopolitical uncertainty and economic instability. The spike followed Israel's preemptive strike on Iran, raising fears of broader regional conflict. Although the attack did not directly impact oil infrastructures, concerns persist over potential retaliations. Iran's crude output in April stood at 3.305 million barrels per day. Supporting the bullish momentum, the International Energy Agency reported a larger than expected drop in U.S. crude inventories, signaling strong demand. The IEA also reassured markets of its readiness to act, citing 1.2 billion barrels of emergency reserves. And following escalating tensions in the Middle East, U.S. stocks closed lower on Friday as rising geopolitical tensions spurred a broader shift towards safe haven assets. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq each fell 0.7%, and the Dow Jones dropped over 600 points, weighed down by risk-off sentiments following Israel's preemptive strike on Iran, which targeted nuclear facilities. Israel has vowed to continue operations until the perceived threat is neutralized. Airline stocks were hit hard, with American Airlines, Delta Airlines, and United Airlines all sharply lower. Mega-cap tech stocks also declined, including Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, and Tesla. In contrast, energy and defense stocks outperformed. buoyed by rising oil prices and heightened security concerns. ExxonMobil gained 2.5%, Chevron rose 1.4%, and Lockheed Martin climbed 3.5%. At the same time, European stocks fell sharply on Friday, with the Stock 50 down 1.4% and the Stock 600 losing 1%, both closing at nearly one-month lows, also due to the escalating geopolitical tension in the Middle East. Germany's DAX dropped 1.1% to 23,516, also hitting a one-month low and ending the week down 3.2%. The sell-off followed Israel's airstrike on Iran, which targeted nuclear and military sites and killed 2 senior Iran commanders. Israel signaled further action, with Iran vowing retaliation and launching drones towards Israel territory, fueling investor anxiety and a broad flight to safety. Auto stocks were among the hardest hit, with Stellantis, Ferrari, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW posting notable losses. In contrast, energy and defense stocks outperformed amid rising oil prices and security concerns. Notable gainers include Shell, Eni, RWE, Rheinmetall, and Thales. For the week, the Stock 50 fell 2.6% and the Stock 600 declined 1.4%. For the week, the Stock 50 fell 2.6%, while the Stock 600 declined 1.7%. And in other news, the Eurozone trade surplus narrowed 9.9 billion euros in April 2025, down from 13.6 billion euro a year earlier, and well below market expectations of 18.2 billion euros. This also marked a sharp decline from March's record of 37.3 billion euros, largely due to a significant drop in the chemicals surplus following new U.S. tariffs. Exports fell 1.4% year-on-year to 243 billion euros, driven by steep declines in mineral fuels and lubricants and machinery and transport equipment. Although chemical exports rose 6%, this was a sharp slowdown from 50.5% surge in March. Export growth to the U.S. also decelerated, while shipments to China and the UK dropped by 14.9% and 6% respectively. Imports edged up by 0.1% to 233 billion euros, supported by increased purchases of chemicals and food and drink, though most other categories declined. Imports from the US and China also grew, but at a slower pace. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of this break.
I'm trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
I'm also trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
Start a conversation with the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Check jamstockx.com for information and a list of registered stockbrokers. You can also call the Jamaica Stock Exchange at 876-967-3271 for information on how to begin. I am achieving my financial goals.
I'm achieving my financial goals.
We're here to open a savings account for my son John. I really want him to start saving and managing his own money.
And I need for Save to visit my father in New York.
Okay, based on what you said and our risk assessment, he will qualify for simplified customer due diligence requirements. I'll need your ID, proof of income, TRN, and John's ID as well.
Okay, here you go.
Opening an account is easier than you think using simplified customer due diligence requirements, also called CDD.
And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, BOJ's intervention in the forex market for a third You're watching CBX Caribbean Business Exchange. Your region, your business, your source. Welcome back, and now to recap our top stories. In the local news, Morgan Stanley's executive urges active investing as valuation multiples expand. Regionally, CARICOM Secretary General calls for regional leaders to deepen trade ties and diversify economies. And on the international scene, global markets rattle as Israel-Iran conflict escalates. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Rondine Williams and the entire production team, I'm Yanil Wood, thanking you for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source. Happy Father's Day when it comes.